Hello friends, and welcome back to this course titled as British Poetry. Friends, in this journey of the course British Poetry, we have travelled a lot from the time of Chaucer, mid of the 14th century. We are now in this unit 14 talking about a very famous poet WB Yeats and his poem The Second Coming, which was published in the 19th century. So, you can imagine that 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th and then 19th. We have travelled in the poetic development of around 600 years in Britain. It might come in your mind that when we are reading about British poetry, then why WB Yeats, who was an Irish person, is included into this category. He himself disliked the British tag which was given to him. But friends, this is a very important point which I am mentioning. When we talk about Britain, we have in our mind England, Ireland, Scotland and the islands of Wales. So, whosoever writer is born and brought up into these four places will be considered into the category of British poetry, British literature. Their genres of writing may be different. Poetry or prose or novel or play, biography, autobiography, memoir, travelogue, diary writing, picaresque, any let us say pattern of writing which they follow. But if they are born at these places, they will be considered as the British writers. Sometimes I feel that Salman Rushdie was born in pre-independence Pakistan area. Now Pakistan, earlier than 1947 it was India, and Salman Rushdie is considered as an Indian writer, rather he is let us say diasporic now. He is let us say citizen of other country, not India or Pakistan. But this is reality that we cannot change the place of our birth. It defines our roots, our thinking and our ideology. So, with this note, let us now try to illustrate the various symbols which are identified by WB Yeats in this poem, The Second Coming. This is going to be the lecture outcome of this 30 minutes lecture. So, let us now begin discussion on this very interesting topic, symbolism in the second coming. Friends, in the earlier lectures on WB Yeats, we have talked a lot about his mysticism, the mythology in which he believes, the folklore, the Irish nationalism, the beauty of his native country, and the tradition to which he belonged. And now we are moving towards a very important aspect of his poetry, that is symbolism. Symbolism is using symbols to signify ideas and qualities, giving them symbolic meaning that are different from the literal meaning. Friends, this concept of symbolism need to be understood by all the readers. When we say that we wish to propose someone and we take a rose in our hand, a red rose, why does a red rose symbolize love? Nobody knows. Since time immemorial, or this symbol might have been created in some literary work of the Middle Ages or the 14th, 15th century or 16th century, and later it became popular. But now the mind of the people is channelized and created in a manner that everyone in the world associate the red rose with love. We need to understand the science behind symbolism. Why a symbol signify some idea or quality? From where this symbolic meaning is arrived? And is there any difference between the symbolic meaning and the literal meaning? Yeats has used multiple symbols, such as falcon as the symbol of the world, desert birds are the symbol of approaching death, and the second coming symbolizes the indifference. So, you can see that he has taken examples from the real world, the virtual world, the spiritual world, and mysticism. When he talks about falcon, he is concerned about this world. When he talks about desert birds, he is concerned about death, the end of this world, the doomsday, or we can say the judgment day. When he talks about the second coming, he is symbolizing the indifference of the people from God. Let us now discuss various symbols present in the poem one by one. The first and very important symbol which WB Yeats has used in this poem is the gyre. And we have discussed a lot about it in the earlier classes, but here we are looking at this concept of gyre as a symbol. Yeats opens the second coming with an image of the falcon escaping the falconer. So, we can see that there is a relationship which is created between the falcon and the falconer in the poem. Swinging outward in a widening gyre, a term Yeats coined to describe a circular path or pattern. So, we can, let us say, imagine that Yeats was about to, let us say, describe a circular path or pattern, and the falcon and the falconer both are, let us say, fallen into that path or pattern, and we are unable to understand that whether they are able to meet each other or not. As the falcon flies in great arcs away from the falconer, so the world spins out of control. The gyre was Yeats' symbol of a human epoch of 2000 years. We had seen that, friends, since the time immemorial. From 2000 years, these things have been happening, and these symbols have been created as a mythological creatures. As we see that falcon is flying in great arc, surrounded from everywhere, and the falcon is away from the falconer, suggesting that the world is spinning out of control. What is this out of control? The span of losing the strength of the system. Just like there is a system with which a car moves ahead. In the same way, the control of the world is also maintained by a system named as God. And the gyre was Yeats' symbol of the human epoch of 2000 years. This gyre, as I told you in the earlier classes, has a point of starting at the bottom, and then it, let us say, increases its circumference and moving away from the, let us say, the center point or the starting point. In the same way, the reference of spiritus mundi is also important and related to the, let us say, the human epoch. We are going to discuss it in the coming slides. The poem frames a 2000-year historical progression, with the birth of Christ marking the beginning and the war marking the end, suggesting that how, let us say, the beginning from the birth of Christ, the starting of AD, Anno Domino, and from there where have we reached in these 2000 years? What kind of development we are focused on? And whether the war is able to mark the end of the world or not. Friends, these are very serious questions, because everyone in the world was thinking after First World War that the world is going to end now. And to an extent they were right, because Second World War happened immediately 30 and 40 years after the First World War. The next symbol, which is, let us say, which can be identified on the basis of these poems, is the tide. What is the significance of this tide and how does it work? The remainder of the first stanza after the widening gyre deals with symbols of destruction and death. Friends, this widening gyre is a kind of, let us say, tide, a kind of a storm. The destruction and death is one of the, let us say, major elements which are the foundation roots of the creation of this poem. The cliff is widening. Nobody knows where it is going to, let's say, end. Things fall apart, says Yeats, and mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. All of us know that the things are going apart from the control or the center point of the world. And when Yeats says that mere anarchy is loosed upon the world, he gives a clear message. There is anarchy, there is dictatorship, there is totalitarian state towards which we are moving in the present society. He uses the symbol of a tide, blood dimmed, drowning innocence that destroys hope and from which humanity needs salvation. Friends, when we talk about this symbol of tide in the poem, we see that the blood of the people is dimmed. Dimmed means there is too much bloodshed that nobody is now caring about it. The innocence is drowning from the world. The world is now full of cruel people, brutal people. Innocent people are all gone, they are killed. And this very painful notion destroys the hope from which humanity needs salvation. Friends, this is a very important and universal message of Yeats through this poem. If we look in the context of India, we see that there is a salvation needed to the common people from all these, let's say, crimes which are happening all around. The criminal people are enjoying and the innocent people are afraid. What is going to happen with them? Anybody, let's say, can kill them or can loot them. The next symbol in the poem is the symbol of the second coming. As all of you know that this is a biblical symbol related to Christianity and Bible. Yeats introduces the symbol of the second coming in the second stanza, which is used as an answer to the first. Friends, the poem is divided into stanzas, and if we look at the first stanza, we see that Yeats create a very, let's say, realistic picture of the world by saying that the condition is very critical. But when Yeats came to the second stanza, he proposes a solution to that. Answer to the question which he has asked from himself in the first stanza. And the solution is the coming of the Christ, the second coming. The destruction of the first stanza must stand for something. And Yeats sees it as heralding a new epoch or a gyre. Friends, a new kind of epoch, a new kind of gyre is mixing with the old gyre. And it is leading us from the sins towards the salvation. The end of the world is going to mark a new beginning for the world. Yeats draws on the language of the book of Revelation to conjure an image of Christ's return. This is a book of Revelation, friends, related to Christianity. Everybody knows about it. And Yeats knows that the return of Christ is very essential in the present times. He further included biblical symbolism when explaining that for 2000 years one gyre, the sleep of the Sphinx, was waxed to nightmare by a rocking cradle, presumably of the Christ child. Friends, Yeats says that the symbol of Sphinx, which we are going to discuss in the next part, has awakened because of the nightmare of these sins committed by the common people. And this is a very dangerous sign for the humanity. Now, let us talk about the next symbol, that is Sphinx. As soon as Yeats introduces the idea of a second coming as salvation, he uses his most powerful symbol, the Sphinx, to offer his prediction of the future of the world and of humanity. Friends, WB Yeats think that the future of the world lies in the, let us say, humanity. Not the scientific development, not the scientific invention, but it is a powerful symbol which is created in the humanity by, let us say, Yeats. As soon as he alludes to Christ, a vast image of a pagan religion appears to wander towards Bethlehem. Friends, Yeats think that when he is, let us say, talking about Christ, there is a vast image of pagan religion which creates in front of him. Maybe that belonged to the ancient Rome and Greece, and that is appearing to wander towards Bethlehem. The society is now looking again towards Bethlehem, towards religion, towards spirituality. Friends, Yeats find peace in that, let us say, spirituality. The symbol here is of the end of a religion that for Yeats embodied hope and innocence. And this is right, friends. People are becoming atheists day by day. Now they do not believe in the existence of God. The hope and innocence is slowly declining from the human society. Its power is gone, and the hour of the rough beast, the Sphinx, an allusion to pre-Christian religion, has come around again. Friends, we see that the rough beast like the Sphinx is moving towards the humanity. There is an allusion in the pre-Christian religion which has come around again in this brutality of the society. The next symbol, which is related to the poem and one of the very important symbols, is the symbol of falcon. The falcon described in the second coming is symbolic of the human race, specifically in modern times as it has become disconnected from its roots. Friends, we see in the symbol of falcon a human race, a new kind of humanity. Yeats is here specifically talking about the present time, the modern time, which has disconnected itself with its roots. And friends, you and me know that very well. The new generation has no concern with the traditional values. When Yeats writes, "The falcon can't hear the falconer," he means that humanity has lost touch with its original values. This corruption is what leads to terrible hardship like World War I. So, friends, Yeats is trying to prove his argument by giving the example of World War I. World War I was a kind of, let us say, extreme corruption and misuse of power. The falcon being unable to hear the falconer could also represent that Yeats perceived as a collective loss of religious faith across the world. And maybe, I am just guessing, WB Yeats is trying to say that because of the lack of religious beliefs, the people are moving towards cruelty. The lack in religious and moral values may be one of the reasons of World War I, according to Yeats. Thus, people who are, let us say, symbolized as the falcon are disconnected from their spirituality, which is the guiding falconer. Yeats wished to convey a message that spirituality and only spirituality is going to guide the world now. There are alternative interpretations as well regarding what the falcon symbolizes. The falcon could also represent logic, and thus the falcon losing contact with the falconer suggests humanity abandoning logic. And we are looking at it, friends, in our society. People in these days are becoming irrational, illogical. They do not wish to ask questions. They live their life in a mechanical manner. And this mechanical mind do not have any kind of creativity in it. Basically, we are moving away from the basic human instincts. William Butler Yeats, an Irish poet, wrote The Second Coming in 1919, friends, immediately after the First World War. First World War was over, at the close of World War I. It's a violent and mesmerizing poem that outlines the end of the era and a coming great destruction. So friends, Yeats is not positive on the end of World War I, but he thinks that World War I is a symbol of the violence which is going to come next. The great destruction is going to end the world soon. Its symbolism largely centers around destruction and rebirth, and most analyses of the poem stem from these types of symbols. So, friends, the foundation on which Yeats creates all these symbols is the foundation of destruction and rebirth. He is trying to say that the complete destruction is the symbol of new beginning, and First World War is not the last World War. There will be world wars in the coming centuries which are going to destruct and eliminate the human race, the human civilization from the surface of earth. So, friends, with this note, I wish from all of you that you should think a little more about the philosophy of Yeats. What is something that makes these poets or writers as the epitome of their ages, faces of their ages? In the works of Geoffrey Chaucer, when we discussed them, you found a kind of universality. Chaucer's characters are also applicable in the present time, and the same applies to the last unit writer WB Yeats. And almost all the poets which we have included in this course, T.S. Eliot, Robert Browning, or many others, Alexander Pope, S.T. Coleridge, you will find a very common aspect in these British poets, and that common aspect is the aspect of universal approach, which is why reading the works of these writers was relevant 100 years before also, and that will remain relevant 200 years after the present time as well. I hope that with this note you will, when you will make the first reading of the poem The Second Coming, the entire poem and the message which WB Yeats wished to convey through, let us say, through this poem will be clear in your mind. And the references, the phrases, the lines which I have used in these PPTs are going to help you in interpreting and reinterpreting the hidden meanings in the poem The Second Coming. That is all for today. Thank you for listening.